Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheila, and our story today is called A Big Brave Deed. Well, Jenny, she was sitting in the living room looking out the big window. She had been reading her book. It was a Sabbath book. It told stories about a little girl named Susie Christie. She had just come to the end of the book, and she looked outside as the sun was setting. It was beautiful out there, but she wasn't thinking about how pretty the sunset was. She was puzzled, and she couldn't figure out what to do about it. And then she remembered, when she got really puzzled, if she asked her mom, she gently could give her an answer very quickly. So she rushed off to see her mother. And she said, "Oh, Mama, I don't understand something." And Mother said, "What is it, Jenny? Tell Mama about it." Jenny said, "Well, I've been reading my Sabbath book, and I just finished all the stories in it. And Mama, what I don't understand is all the little girls in the books that I read. They all do big and brave and wonderful things, and stuff is always happening to them. Mommy, can it really be true? Nothing ever happens to me." Well, Mother grinned at her and she said, "Oh, Jenny, yes, the stories you've been reading are true." And then Jenny interrupted and she said, "Well, Mama, I just read a story about Susie Christie. She had been asked to take her little sister, who was about 2 years old, for a walk. And when she had gotten to the top of a small bridge that ran over the river, her little sister kind of wrung her hand out of Susie's hand, and she toddled over as quick as she could to the edge of the bridge. And Mama, before Susie could get there, she climbed up on the edge of the bridge. And Mama, she tried to stand up on that edge, and within just a second, she started to fall off into the river. And Mama, Susie saw her, and she immediately reached out and she was able to grab the edge of her dress and pull her back up onto the bridge. She saved her little sister's life. I've never done anything like that." Mama smiled again. And this is what Mama said. I want to read it to you so you get it just the way Mama said it. Here we go. "Never mind, my child," she said. "If you will do carefully everything you do understand to do, and you obey cheerfully, even when you can't see why you should do it, you will please your Heavenly Father, and you'll make me very happy. And perhaps someday you may have a chance to do something big and brave too." That was a good thing to tell her daughter. And Jeannie, she thought about that for a while. And she said, "All right, Mother, that makes sense. If I do cheerfully everything I'm asked to do, even though I don't know why I should do it, and even if I do things that I don't quite understand, and if I act real quick, Mama, maybe someday I can do something real big and brave." Mother said, "You're right. Someday Well, Jenny felt better. And so, for the next while, she kept looking around for things she could do, good things, because the other thing Mother had said, well, if you do the little things, someday you'll get to do a big thing. So every day she looked around for good little things she could do, and she found some of those, but no big things. Well, then, one morning, they got a telegram, and it said that their auntie was going to come for a visit, and she was bringing her 2-year-old little boy with her. They were really excited about that. And of course, they sent back a message to Auntie saying, "Oh, please come. We'd love to have you." Well, the day finally came. This is another one of those stories that happened a long time ago. They all got in to the buggy and they went off to the train station to pick up Auntie and little Willie, who was 2 years old. They got home, and Jenny, she had such a good time playing with little Willie, except for one thing. She noticed that Willie liked to do what he wanted to do, not necessarily what he was being told to do. And one of the things he liked to do was when Jenny would hold him on her lap, he would take his little chubby hands and he would grab her hair tightly and he would pull. Well, that didn't feel good at all. But Jenny thought, he's just a little bitty thing. He doesn't know what he's doing. So she didn't fuss. She would gently try to remove his hands. Well, one day they had a nurse. Now, nurses, you think of somebody in the hospital and doctor's office and stuff, but richer people used to have nurses that weren't the same kind of nurses. They took care of children in the nursery. So when Auntie had come, she had brought a nurse with her. And, well, after that, Jenny noticed that if she was holding Willie and she was out in front of her parents or her aunt or even the nursery, they immediately made Willie stop and told him, "No, don't do that." Jenny liked having little Willie there. She didn't have any brothers or sisters, and she wondered if that's why she never got to do anything big and brave. She didn't have a brother or sister to save. Well, the days went by. They only got to stay a couple weeks. And Mother came to Jenny. She was outside playing. And she said, "Jenny, Auntie and I need to go to the train station to pick up Auntie's husband and to pick up your daddy. Now, I have a request for you." Maggie, that was the nurse's name, she was busy. And Mother said, "I would like you to go in the house. Little Willie's asleep in his crib in the nursery. I would like you to stay in the nursery until we get back. You know, little tiny people, you never know what they might do and they could get hurt. We'd really like you to stay in the nursery." And Jenny, she opened her mouth and she said, I I would rather just stay outside." And Mother said, "I know, but it's not always what you want to do. And Jenny, she looked at her mother and she turned around and she started toward the nursery, up the stairs of the front porch into the house. And all the time, her conscience was telling her, Jenny Browning, shame on you. Mama asked you to do something really easy. You need to go do it. Remember, cheerfully? You know, our conscience helps tell us what we should do. But Jenny did what she was told, even though she really didn't want to. And she went in the nursery, and Willie was sound asleep. So she was very careful. And you know, she knew that she didn't have to just sit there. She could read her book, or she could do something quiet there while Willie was taking his afternoon nap. Jenny was still having a little fight with her own conscience in her head. But as she looked outside at how pretty it was, she started to feel a little better. You know, she could always go outside and play when Mama got back. So as she was standing there looking out the window, looking at the sunshine, suddenly she smelled something, and it smelled like wool cloth burning. And she went, something's burning. Then she looked over at the fireplace. You know, in those big old fancy houses, almost every room had a fireplace. And in those days, things weren't built and fixed as carefully. And what looked like had happened was that a spark had flown out of the fireplace, and it landed on the big wool rug that sat in front of the fireplace. And there on the one side of it, Jenny could see a little tiny curl of smoke going up. And then she saw a spark of fire, and she went, what can I do? What can I do? And then she remembered one of the things that her mother had said. Her mother had said, now, Jenny, if for any reason, like your clothes, your skirt or something, should catch on fire, you need to suffocate the fire. That means you need to stop oxygen from coming to it. You need to get down on the floor and roll. So that makes the flames go out, or put something around you that blocks the oxygen so the fire will go out. And Ginny looked around. What could she do? She didn't scream. She didn't holler. She grabbed the edge of that heavy wool rug and she threw the other end of it up over where she saw that little curl of smoke and the fire coming out. And then she thought, what if it's not enough? So then she turned around. Beside the little crib that was in there was also a bed in there. And Jenny, she turned around and she grabbed the bedspread and she made it in a big pile on top of the rug. Then she grabbed the blanket and she put that on top. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she grabbed the two great big pillows that people sleep on and she put them on top of it. And she looked at it and she still wasn't satisfied. What if that fire got out and it burned their house? So Jenny got up and she sat down on that big mountain that she had made. And she thought, surely this will stop the fire. And then she was so confused. She couldn't remember if it was the rug that was on fire or if it was her skirt that was on fire. But she sat there quietly. And then she thought, I need help. So then she did scream very loudly, help, help. Well, Maggie, that nurse, she came running. She flew open the door to the nursery, and when she saw that big pile with Jenny on top of it, she went and she could smell the burning wool from what had been burning on that rug. Well, when Jenny had screamed, little Willie, he woke up and he lended his voice to it as well, and he started wailing, crying at the top of his lungs. Well, the nurse ran and snatched him up, and she snatched Jenny off of that big mountain of things that she'd put on there. And she comforted Willie, so he stopped crying, and she set Jenny on one of the chairs. And of course, she checked to see if Jenny was hurt, which she wasn't, and the baby wasn't hurt. Well, it was about an hour later when Mama and Auntie and Jenny's daddy and the uncle all came home. And what a tale that nurse had to tell about how big and brave Jenny had been and how she'd saved little Willie's life. And Jenny thought, I didn't think about being big and brave. I only thought about stopping the fire so the fire didn't go into the crib with little Willie. Well, that night, when it was bedtime, Auntie came and she kissed Jenny on the cheek to tell her good night, and she hugged her ever so tightly. And she said, I am so proud of you. You were so brave to put out the fire and to save little Willie's life. You saved Willie. Boys and girls, remember what Mama had said to Jenny. Do what you're told, even if you don't understand. Do the little things every day. And when something big and brave comes along, you'll be able to do it with God's help. And our Father in heaven will be proud of you as well as your parents. Thank you, boys and girls, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.